happy ending is process, right? Who can live happily ever after in a labor camp? So, you know, so that responsibility is inappropriable or can't happen in the present, and that both models that he thematizes collapse on their velocities. I would be very happy with that, to show, rather than you trying to recuperate one over the other, which we're trained to do, but to show that Dostoevsky, by the way, this is a teaching moment. When you're writing and you see that something isn't working as you might like it to be, don't run away, don't do a hit and run, don't pretend you never saw this. Stay with it, take a few deep breaths, and say, you know what? Dostoevsky is not going to provide us with a happy ending. He's not deluded. Responsibility, which this whole novel has been obsessed with, turns out to be the impossible. It will never be attained to, and the only happy ending will be in a labor camp in Siberia. That's really, that'll blow away your readers and so on, spectators, in case you're making it into a film, and so on and so forth, rather than wishing for there to be a good version, a good breast and a bad breast, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Dostoevsky kind of puts in this artificial happy ending almost for the children. He loved children. But a deeper reading, I think you're absolutely correct.
No, but it can't be a happy ending if it's in Siberia in a labor camp.
You're right. You're right.
I love when you say that. Thank you. Russell, very good.
So, no, I just have a basic question about the whole deconstructive project. Let's go back to the example of hospitality, okay, the origin of hospitality. Now, Derrida picks as his paradigmic case the case of Lot in the Old Testament. Now, hospitality, it's xenos, yeah, in Greek. There's another paradigmic, archetypic case in the Odyssey, okay, where the suitors come when Odyssey is away and they're trying to appropriate Penelope, and that's why they're...
When Ulysses,
he's away, and
right.
One of the themes of the Odyssey is Xenos, and how the
right.
bad guys violate Xenos, okay? Now, okay, you could argue Penelope's Odysseus's property and all that kind of stuff, but it's a far more benign example. It doesn't involve, it involves resistance to rape, you know.
But rape is still the main,
yeah.
Let's say, milieu and ambience.
Okay, but okay.
And there's a feminine. That's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, but the point is, it's a very different case to Lot's case.
How different is it when the real pressure zone is the possible and imminent and structurally already arrived rape?
But if they had taken
it's averted.
Penelope,
it's averted, but that
yeah.
isn't that the place? I mean, it doesn't efface
right.
the rapeable feminine in the development of the thought of hospitality.
Okay, but yeah, but okay.
What do you want it to do?
But
what
can I just say at a surface level, Lot gives his daughters to be raped, whereas Odysseus is outraged that these strangers come and violate the Xenos, and the way to violate the Xenos was they wanted to take Penelope. Okay, my question though is, how does Derrida pick one case rather than the other? Like, is he playing the kind of the tabloid reporter, going off to the land of the past, picking the worst case and using that as the paradigm?
If that was your question, you did well to confess it, because now I do want to respond to that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's not any story that he's picking, right? It's not a matter of indifference. It's our Abrahamic, not all of us, but even he shows in Forgiveness, even Japanese and Korean cultures adopt certain Abrahamic precepts and imperatives and structures. It's the ur-text, the originary story that establishes hospitality as a virtue and as something that, and it's the guidebook, it's the script, it's the playbook, it's the origin of hospitality. So he's not He's not casting about nervously for a sensationalist. We are the inheritors, and as long as we don't acknowledge this, as long as we're disavowing that we are the inheritors of unspeakable violence, we will continue, as we are continuing, to live in the most violent, blind, and uncomprehending behaviors. So Derrida's question, he's perplexed. This is like a guide for the perplexed. This is Maimonides' important book. How the hell is it that something that we value and hold dear, and almost anything that we value and hold dear, demands the sacrifice of, very often, woman, or the desecration of something sacred, and that everything starts revving its engines on a horrific and unassimilable catastrophe. This is a question, and he's pointing it out. Now, we could say that another text, now you wanted to offer a nicer version, you brought in alternative history, but that text is also about struggling with the scene of rape, right?
With a different outcome.
With a different outcome, but it still means that rape is at stake, and that the object of the text is rapeable. And it has something to do with the very possibility of hospitality.
But if they had raped, they would have violated Xenos.
Right.
So it could mean the opposite.
Xenos, this is how Derrida will work
them.
with something like pharmacon, where, I mean, the scandal is we're not reading him because he takes this very thing into account, how it's double-edged, how Xenos means at once xenophobia, or Xenos, or hosting, or opening, and a relation to the stranger, and so on and so forth. He's trying to get at the pernicious origin of a Western Abrahamic habit.
Okay, well, if I can continue, well, just it's a lead-on point that also a problem is that, okay, he picks the Bible. The Bible is what's determining us all, and he picks Korea and Japan, and I kind of red flagged that in my mind, that what's he saying, that everything the Japanese doing, they're just mimicking
No,
the West?
he's not saying that.
Are you sure he's not saying that?
Yes.
Like when is he talking about the Prime Minister back in the mid-90s apologised?
Well, we'll get to forgiveness.
Okay, yeah, sure. But there is a problem there. You picked
feel
that
that
text
you're
and you say, that's
invested
everybody
in
else's
seeing
text.
lots of trouble here, and I want to walk with you and work with you.
Okay.
I'm not an ideologue. I'm not trying to force a text down your throat. I'm bringing the good news of Derrida to you. And you may think you can take it or leave it, but I think since one of his major concerns is that we are inheritors, we are heirs, we are the custodians to so much that has been so mutilated and mangled, that we need to look at this very, very, very closely, what it is that we think we're doing, or what it is that we resist or disavow. And all I'm asking is that we take into account certain things that actually have thrown us off. Heidegger says that certain mistakes or errors can throw us off for centuries. Like the decision to say fraternité has thrown us off. I'm not saying there's the right path, but that is not it. Yes?
This may sound as a theoretic question, but how can we know that we're actually the inheritance, or the how do you call that?
Heirs.
The heirs of this legacy? I wouldn't consider myself.
That's why we're here, and that's the problem, that you don't consider yourself.
I have the feeling that this is this is
Yes, that's what he's going to address in forgiveness, that we all think, well, we didn't have slaves, so we're not responsible. The question is by what circuits, what subterranean logic, what invisible tracking systems and billing systems certain debts arrive, historical debts. It's like, if it's the opposite of what you pointed out, that the Germans think they're not heirs to the catastrophe, the Shoah. You see? So you've got to choose or lose here. You may think you have not inherited all this shit, and that's a stance of maybe, I'm offering a hypothesis, deluded, emancipatory.
Überwindung.
Yeah, thank you. Nice. Überwindung. I'm telling you, guess what? You've inherited all this shit. And especially as those engaged in these texts, open your ears, try to be hospitable to what I'm trying to bring to you, and let's try to work together to see what's going on. And remember yesterday I asked that you read yourselves reading. So very fortunately we have the gift of some resistance, and we're going to worry that. You know what worry means in English? To worry means not only to worry, because I'm worried, but to go like this, to really poke at something, probe it, worry it like this. We're going to tap on it. We're going to work with you, and without trying to, I'm not trying to be condescending. I want you to experience the immense gratification of understanding what kind of shifts are taking place in these moves and assertions, and to find out where we are in Siberia and in labor camp and in linguistic, in a stranglehold or a straitjacket that we're not even aware of. This is what we're trying to probe. I'm not trying to be authoritarian, I'm trying to be rigorous. Sometimes it doesn't show. But if I were a people pleaser only, I am a little, but if I were only that, I would just be so happy for every, but I want us to be so well trained. That's my pride. I sign this class like I sign a text. So it's my pride to have us be able to be unbeatable and to have understood what's at stake. Afterwards, what you do with it, I'm blessing you. I'm excited for you. I'm happy for you. But as long as you're in my custody, on my watch, I really want to be a worthy, if it's necessary, adversary or animal trainer. This is Nietzsche's term. Animal training is noble because it doesn't try to get inside you. It just brings one to one's own nobility, according to Nietzsche. Nowadays we have a different relation to cruelty to animals, but he had a sense of the nobility of the animal that needs a companion species to do certain things without attacking, without anything. So I'm excited about being able to do this training with you, and I'm happy that you are confident enough and trusting enough to tell me where your red flags go up. But let me just say, when you start an utterance with "I'm having trouble with," which you didn't, dangerously close, "I'm having trouble with," as Nietzsche says, that's a resentful beginning. That's a resentful startup. This is why I was trying to say, this is great to start a question by saying, you said this said this, I'm linking it like this, and here's where I want to join you. Okay? So if we can make this into a very productive, which I think we will, because you brought in a wonderful text, and it's as a kind of counter force, and we'll try to see how, in fact, those two texts are very compatible and have the same apps in certain ways. Yes, Jenny?
I'm a bit confused, actually. That's why I want to start. Because since you mentioned that it's about making decisions, it was like 20 minutes ago or something like that, I think about all the time about that Jacob Derrida in that way that he's talking about the impossibility of deciding that's, for example, like that's hospitality or that's forgiveness or that's a gift. Because actually he's talking about that we're not able to decide at the moment we say it's forgiveness or it's a gift.
You're not confused at all. I want to hear where the confusion comes in. You're not confused.
No, but it starts when you said it's about making a decision, and I don't think that this decision is possible because the moment we
Exactly.
make a decision, it's impossible to have.
You have not been confused for 1 second. You're exactly on target. If there is a target, there is a point. That's already a phallic decision. What's the point is, always a phallogocentric question. What's your point? I'm off point. We're thrown off. Remember I said yesterday that will be our Geworfenheitstool, or thrownness. We're thrown off. You're not thrown off at all. And this is what I wanted to move toward, which is to say, entirely compatible with what you just reminded us of, Derrida he leaves the possible to others. If you want to work with the possible, go work with someone else. He's dealing with the impossible. So, hospitality is, rigorously speaking, impossible. And he shows why. Even though we might see something, offshoots of it, or think we've experienced it or given it, but that's conditional. Unconditional hospitality we've never known. So when I said a decision, I just said the first, and thank you for making me clarify this, I wouldn't want it to be confusing. Things that need to be decided on and aren't already given as decided are undecidable, right? It's totally, strictly undecidable. And you're faced with undecidability, and that's the crux, undecidability. But given the groundwork of undecidability, if you have to make a decision, which you can't, as you pointed out, it's impossible, but still, it's both and. That's the horrible structure. It's not either or. That would be my only slight adjustment, perhaps, as we talk. You can't make a decision, you're right, it's undecidable, but you have to. And at that moment, it's madness. It's impossible, because it's impossible to make a decision is madness. So you're right, it's impossible. And yet, sometimes you make a decision nonetheless. And that moment is dizzy, it's vertiginous, it's like, I hope I did the right thing. It was impossible to decide. I could not decide, but I had to decide. But you're absolutely right. The fundamental structure is that of impossibility. Yes, and then George, did you have something?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, go ahead.
Question about, would Derrida consider language a technology, or does he see something more essential there? Because feeding back to what you were saying earlier about we have a debt to these words like hospitality, and it seems to me that the debt is more to language itself. And in fact, if it is a technology that we've invented, that has become this overdetermined
We haven't
thing.
invented it. No.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
No,
It was
no.
already always there.
That's the problem. Lacan says, for example, that you're traversed by language.
Neologisms won't help. Creating new words won't help.
That might be, it's a negotiating, a lever.
Isn't political correct language an attempt to escape from this dilemma?
Absolutely, absolutely. And to talk about rape is not self-understood, that this is something that should be talked about, and yet how could it not be? And this is something that is routinely repressed. Victor Vitanza just wrote a book about a horrible book, an impossible book, a dreadful book on rape, and how it determines all of our history, starting with as the startup engine with the Derrida. Did you have a point?
Yeah,
And
maybe
then
a little off the subject, but I think I did experience unconditional hospitality living with American Indians in the community in Ojai. And they would say to me, or I was told frequently, all we want is an apology, and I wonder how apology fixes.
We're going into forgiveness, yeah.
Okay.
But if all they want is apology, it's conditional, right? If there's a demand, if I want something in exchange, it's not unconditional.
Well, no, I mean, not for me, I mean, they want something for what.
Yes, but it was a
what's been done to them.
demand, I understand. You probably came as close as one could to unconditional hospitality. But where there's a demand, whether it's addressed to you or not, and yet it's both and, it was addressed to you,
Oh, that's very interesting.
right? It
The
was.
shadow.
You were maybe the representative, the conduit, the only possibility of the telecommunicational center. You know, you were perhaps the commando or the angel of Annunciation. Nonetheless, it was addressed to you. So, it wasn't unconditional. If we would go through the list of unconditional qualities, it would be no demand, no demand, no request, no requirements. You are my guest. I ask nothing of you, nothing. Is that even possible? And in India, wasn't there something? Didn't you offer some flowers in return or something?
Well, no. The reason I was saying that is
You
because
didn't? No.
yeah, of course I did. No, what I was suggesting is that in the act of being God, that's what they saw as conditional. We must be good. That's what I.
Oh, that's very good.
That's how I saw it. That's what I meant.
Excellent. That's a really interesting refinement. That you did have an identity. It happened to be a divinity, a deity, but it's still you.
Posing as unconditionality, but it's actually you are the conditional.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, this thing about American Indians,
Yeah.
it really brings out the relationship between hospitality and property. Because the thing is, I lived with South American Indians for like 2 weeks, and I didn't feel like an unconditional hospitality at all. It's just that they don't have this same idea of property. So it gives this feeling of like you can just enter a house and sleep wherever you want, and food is readily available for everybody. And in that sense, it's unconditional because they don't have the sense of this is mine. So they don't have this sense of conditioning. In that
Or having
sense.
something to give.
Exactly. But I mean, I wasn't offered anybody's daughter or anything. Like, you know what I mean? They have limits. They understand that you're an outsider.
Yeah.
They're not going to marry you. You know, they're not, you know what I mean? They have boundaries. It's just they're different boundaries that don't pertain to property.
Okay, I just wanted to inspire an opening for us of questions, and we have different levels of responsiveness, responsibility to these texts, and if you do have questions and you're as brave as Russo, then by all means, let's work on this together. I appreciate the friendly concern about some of these issues. I don't know, sometimes I don't control my decibels. Was I yelling at you or something? I got kind of passionate about it, but that's a pedagogical, non-subjective stance, you know. I wanted to, I just want to tell you where I'm coming from, I think, to the extent I have any access code to myself. I wanted passionately for you to really enjoy, I think, the richness of the questioning. That's all. And I felt maybe wrongly that you were shutting it down for some, and so, and I don't mean to be personal, I think you were brave to actually put on the table your sense of limited hospitality to some of these para-concepts. They're not even concepts. Hospitality is not a concept. It's not in any catalog of political, philosophical, or other conceptual terminology. So these are para-concepts that we're working with. We're working with the hardest material, but that is masquerading as easy stuff because you think you know what hospitality is, and you think, so I have to do a double thing here. I have to detach you from your presumed knowledge and familiarity. So there's also an uncomfortable sensation, no doubt, of defamiliarization, right? And with forgiveness, you think you've been forgiven. Well, I've got news for you, but let's take a break.